The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. Of course, as many of you around the world watched last night, we had events take place here, and I'm sure that we will touch on that subject because it affects all of us around the world and it affects autism. We will continue to report on how that will affect autism as we begin to understand that in the coming days. But as always, there is work to be done. There are things to be done, perhaps more now than ever. We will trudge on because that is what we do, and that is what we do today, right? And we have a great show planned for you today where we're going to answer real people's questions in real time to talk about how we can be productive, because that's what you do. So I want to welcome all of you here. And I want to welcome your questions. We are going to start in just a few minutes. We have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh here with us, really the preeminent expert in autism and a visionary in the field of autism. There's nobody I'd rather be in a room with this morning than with her. She's going to be answering your questions live in just a few minutes in that segment that we call Ask Dr. Doreen. A little bit later on in the program, how great is this? We've got licensed marriage and family therapist Vince Redmond is going to be joining us to help us all to know how to language things for our kids and to talk about, because more than 50% of the country here is not happy with the outcome. 50% is, and so we all have to learn how to deal with all of those emotions and move on, and how we language these things to our kids and get through it, right? So Vince is going to be here with us talking about that. We also have Kathy Gott, who's going to be here with us talking about ETA, and she's also going to talk about a project that she's been working on for a really long time, Danny's Farm. So she's going to be here with Nancy and I during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So a lot to do, a lot to talk about. I want to remind you, though, that as always, this program is meant to be interactive. You can share whatever you think and feel, any questions that you have. In fact, Samantha is going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate here with us in the show. While she does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Lots of things to do there, but I think most importantly, if you click on the triangle that is on the computer screen, you can be watching the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you want to go back further into the archives, you can click on the little memo tab that's in the upper left-hand corner. If you want to go further back than the 100 most recent episodes, we really want to encourage you to check out our very consumable videos that are on YouTube, iTunes, Roku, and Stitcher. They are all free to you in all of those locations. But to the side of the computer screen on our homepage is something that we call the live feature. If you will put your cursor in the box that says your question, you type, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen, and in that way you and I can have a conversation. But as I always say, ever so much more important than that is that you can have a conversation with our experts, including Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. So my friends, why not get started with one of the best parts of the week? It's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is here with us looking particularly lovely this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you for
morning.
being here.
Always a pleasure.
We're thrilled to have you here. I mentioned before the start of the show that you are the preeminent expert in the field of autism, having worked in this field for more than 30 years, 3 decades, and worked with individuals from all ages of the spectrum, really in all corners of the world. And not only that, but you are a visionary in this field. If there was ever a time when we needed you, we need you now to let us know what's coming. Because I think one of the hardest things for people is not knowing what's coming. So we want to dive right in today and talk about some of the questions that people have written in. You guys can continue to write your questions in. I want to remind you, though, that there is no expert that could give individual specific advice in this particular format, right? That would be a disservice to the person on the spectrum to think that you could write in a short question and that somebody could give individual specific advice. So having said that, though, it's wonderful to have a resource like this where you can write in for free, anonymously, and ask your question and get ideas and ideas for directions that you want to go into of where to go next. So we thank Dr. Grant-Pichet so much for being here to do that.
It's a pleasure.
I want to start with 2 questions that I believe were written in by the same person, so I lumped them together. Do autistic kids feel uncomfortable if kids stare and make fun of them in the classroom? And do autistic kids feel uncomfortable or embarrassed when general ed kids stare and make fun of them?
So, I guess the answer to that is that it depends on the level of comprehension of the child with autism. I have children on the spectrum who are very much in their own world and not really aware of much that's going on around them. If autism has hit you pretty severely, then it's likely that you will be kind of stimulating your own brain by doing a variety of self-stimulatory behaviors. And when you are engaging in self-stimulatory behaviors, you really are not aware of what's going on around you. So if the child's functioning level is at that level, I would say they probably do not realize what's going on around them and if other children are laughing at them. If it's a child who is in a general ed class, I assume that the child's functioning level is such that they are aware of what's going on, in which case, yes, they do get embarrassed and uncomfortable. They might not experience embarrassment, but they will definitely experience sadness. And again, if it is a child who if others are bullying the child, then our child will definitely feel sadness and fear. If others are laughing at our child in a abstract way, then it's possible that our child might think they're laughing with him or her. In other words, it's possible that our child might think, oh, I must have done something funny, and not realize that they're making fun of our child. So, it's hard to answer these questions because I don't know the child in particular. But if you see that, if you have a child in a classroom and the other children are actually making fun of or staring at the child, staring is a different thing. You have to realize that typically developing kids are curious as well, and they kind of want to know what autism is about or whenever somebody's different, they're curious. So it's hard for them to not stare. They just sort of want to know what it's about. But making fun is a little bit further, and it has a little bit of malicious intent, whereas staring might not. Either way, I would really take this seriously, and I would definitely speak to the teacher. I would speak to the principal. If they have someone who does resource, like if they have someone who's board certified in behavior analysis or understands autism a little bit better, maybe a psychologist on staff, a school psychologist, a counselor, the autism resource director, people like that would easily be able to come in and do a training for the other children explaining what autism is about, explaining how they can help. You know, honestly, with this generation, Shannon, of kids, I found that there's a desire to do good, and I think that if we're able to teach them how they can help this child, that you could turn it around. I don't think in general, I just don't, I think that kids are easily diverted away from bullying. It's just a matter of someone actually talking to them and making them understand what's going on.
You know, I absolutely agree with you. And I think a lot of times kids, they hear, you know, they do presentations at school and they talk about bullying and they put it in terms that those kids understand. But I see that, and I've seen this for years, I don't think it's a new phenomenon, especially when I was teaching, that kids don't realize when they're doing it.
Yes.
They don't understand when they're doing something, what it's perspective taking.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about the neurotypical kids.
Right.
And I will tell you that as a parent, I thought that bullying was going to be this very clearly defined thing that was going to show up in like 7th grade, and it was going to be those evil kids.
Right.
Those bad kids. So the first time I saw a child bully my son, it was a child that I loved.
Really?
A child that I love and that I know what his difficulties are and that I know how hard he has had it. And I came home and I said, and I cried some tears over it. I came home and I said to my husband, I want to hate this child. I want to be mad at this child, but I have to look at it with a grown-up's eyes. He doesn't know, and he's in pain, and we have to teach the bullies. And it has to start with teaching the bullies that that's what bullying is.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know,
what was the form of the bullying, if I may ask?
He got 2 other boys together. I mean, I was there, I saw it. He got 2 other boys together, and because 3rd grade, you know, you wouldn't expect this to come later, but they were looking for status. And so they went up to my son and told him that he was stupid, and they used the R word, and said, you know, that's why you have somebody extra in the classroom with you, because you're so stupid.
Wow.
And it's
so very clear, actually, pretty clear.
Yeah. And there was more of it when I wasn't there, right? But it became a thing where people started to pile on. He was fully included, but there was an aide in the classroom, and the class was separated into teams, right? There's the red bears and the purple penguins, and the teacher would give them something to do and say, okay, you get points, and so everybody take out your book and turn to page 32, and I see that the purple penguins did it, so you guys get a point, right? Positive reinforcement. We support that, right? But because of this thing that was spiraling with the other kids on the playground, then all of a sudden the kids on his team were like, oh, well, we didn't get a point because you took a second longer to do it.
That's
because you're so stupid.
Right.
And it became this pile-on thing. And we had a great teacher who worked on it, and it was important that we didn't just go, it'll be okay and kids will be kids.
Yeah, you can't ignore that kind of stuff. It really does cause, in some cases, it causes lifelong issues for our kids if they really feel it, because they just withdraw. I mean, this is one of the reasons, Shannon, I always said that I don't like. Many years ago, people used to ask me, why do I hold my kids back from integrating them into regular ed? And I always would say, I want my child to have enough adequate language and social skills to be successful. Because if I put them in regular ed and they experience this kind of stuff, it can actually put them back quite a bit.
Yeah. I think it's a really hard issue.
Oh, yeah.
But help to build your kid up. We've talked so many times before about the study that came out of UC Santa Barbara talking about that the most successful way to make your kid bully proof is to get them in a group, to get them in a group where they have status. If there's something that they're good at, start that club at school, because kids are going to, I think our kids that are doing better are going to feel uncomfortable. The first time that I ever saw Jem recognize, he stood up and said something that was, the kindergarten teacher said to them, you know, we're going to have our holiday party tomorrow, and you know, any of you that would like to wear your holiday dress can. And she meant your holiday, you know,
Outfits,
he's very literal.
right.
And he stood up and said, are we supposed to wear a dress?
Right.
Does my mom need to get me a dress? And all the other kids laughed, and he stood there and he said, are you laughing with me or at me?
I love that.
Right? And
what was the reaction?
and the kids just kept laughing. And the teacher, who was the most amazing teacher on the face of the planet, said, you know, we don't make fun of other people. And she built him up, and he went out on the playground, and she and I stayed in the classroom and had a couple of tears over it. And she said, oh, I know that was hard for you to see. And I said, oh, no, you're mistaking my tears. As hard as this is, it shows that he's aware.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a gift. That's a gift, but as a parent, it's my responsibility to make sure now that we've uncovered this thing so he is aware. It's my responsibility to make sure that he has the skills to deal with it. That's why I love CARD, because you guys don't just make them aware and leave. And I think that some people do.
Right.
And CARD does not do that. CARD helps them to deal with, that's really what that cognition curriculum.
Right.
If you just
Right.
make kids aware and don't give them that cognition curriculum, I think it's a big disservice to our kids.
Absolutely, yeah. And you have to give the kids the tools to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you know, these are the things that become more and more, I guess, relevant to our kids the higher they go in their own learning. This is a very, you know, it's an issue that typically developing kids struggle with at all grades.
Yes.
So it's not something
Yes.
that just comes with autism. We're talking about, you know, there's so much bullying going on in different ways that it's really important. It's a
Yes.
very important issue.
Yes. But I encourage people, look at the skills cognition curriculum, in particular the things about thinking, knowing, believing, and perspective taking.
Right, for kids to learn how to deal
yes.
with those things.
Yes.
And whatever level of functioning your child is, please bring this up with the school.
Yes.
And make sure that they are helping you deal with this issue. It's important.
And when you see it happening, model good behavior.
Right, absolutely.
I invite kids to our house all the time to play video games and things, and it is amazing how quickly all of a sudden somebody will say something about one kid and then another kid will say something, and I always shut that down.
Right.
I go, I'm sorry, I turn the TV off, and I go, we're not going to do that here.
Right.
And just so you know, if somebody was in my house saying something about you, I wouldn't allow that either, and you wouldn't want me to. So I'm
Right.
telling you right now, we're not going to do that. And they all go, oh,
Right.
because nobody else ever has said this to them. I
Right.
can see it in their faces,
Right.
and I'm like, no, we don't do that. Would you like it if if everybody was sitting here talking about you? Would you like it? No. Well,
Right.
then we're not going to do that about them.
Right, absolutely.
Shut that you know what down.
Yeah, definitely.
Model that behavior.
Absolutely.
Anyway, all right, moving on to the next question. What are the most effective and evidence-based teaching methods for teaching emotion regulation skills and coping skills in a school setting?
That's a great question.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a fabulous question. You know, so I'll answer this both as a psychologist and as a behavior analyst, because I think generally speaking, there's two sets of things you can do, maybe even more, maybe three. So we'll touch on all of those. As a behavior analyst, there's a lot of stuff you can do to teach people how to regulate their own emotions. A lot of that stuff is actually in our skills curriculum. We've written these things down in our cognition curriculum and in our executive functioning curriculum, because regulating your own emotions has a lot to do with how you understand things. Someone might understand things as harsher than they are and do something self-destructive, or have a very drastic emotion towards it. And I'm not even talking about kids with autism. I mean, look at today, Shannon, you know, we're talking about a lot of people who are upset about the way the presidency went, the elections went, and people actually already last night there were riots, and today, and people do things that are maybe an overreaction because you know, we have to kind of hold ourselves together, maintain how we feel about it, and remember the bigger picture. And like people, and for our kids, what happens is something happens and they really, it just, and it's not just our kids, all kids,
Yeah.
they don't have the ability to put it in a compartment and say, hey, life goes on.
Right.
They basically think that's the end of the world. And so it's very important from a behavioral perspective. We do have a lot of activities that we teach our kids in terms of regulating their own emotions. Things like, writing down like how they feel about it. As an example, comic strip conversations is this series of things where you use comic strips for the child to understand what was said, how that made them feel, what are some appropriate responses, how their responses will make the other person feel, all that sort of stuff. And because we reinforce that, we prompt it, we model it, and we reinforce it, it can fall under ABA, but it is also a kind of cognitive behavior therapy, which is, I would say, probably the main area you want to look at is cognitive behavior therapy, because behavior analysis talks mostly about behavior. Now, for a lot of us who've been in the field for a long time, what we say is that, the expression of emotion and all higher affects, things like thinking, believing, all of those types of things, can also be perceived as a form of behavior, because ultimately they result in behavior. But realistically, these are all cognitions. They're things that go on in our mind and in our heart. And they're internal processes. I know when Jonathan was here, he would talk a lot about how you can reinforce or not reinforce internal processes. And that's, of course, cognitive behavior therapy. Mm-hmm. Now, cognitive behavior therapy is slightly different, but still pretty much the same principles. And what it does is it talks about increasing or reducing thoughts, emotions, behaviors, inferences, anything that's beliefs, anything that's an internal process. So emotion being an internal process, you can use behavioral techniques to regulate emotion, but you can also use cognitive techniques to help the individual understand more about their own emotions and whether those emotions are appropriate, too much, too little, and so on. So how that would work is, let's say if someone is overreacting to a certain situation, you would have a series of cognitive exercises that are kind of like homework, where you've done a lot of these things with Jem also, where you're actually discussing using visuals like comic strips. You're discussing things like, well, how would you rate your fear from this? Was it a 10? And if it was a 10, how are we going to get it to be a 5, which would be a normal or adaptive level? Or if you felt hurt by this, what was it, and what are the things we can do? And you're writing all this down, and then you're giving the individual a series of goals and steps, kind of objectives to get there, and you're reinforcing each one. That's why it's some kind of a behavioral process, because you're breaking it down, you're shaping the behavior. That's what makes it more like ABA. But it is a cognitive thing, because the individual is the one that has to say, okay, I kind of feel okay at this level. I'm ready to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. And so with emotion regulation, cognitive behavior therapy is probably the most effective thing. Now, in cognitive behavior therapy, we also use things that are like spiritual habits, like meditation, breathing exercises, things that are more calming to the biology of the person, and those are paired with high intensity moments, just like we do. Self-regulation has to do with breathing, calming yourself down, taking a deep breath, looking at the next bigger picture, trusting the universe, all that sort of stuff. And so, I think if a child has issues with emotion regulation, depending on their level of functioning, if it's a child who doesn't have a very high understanding of abstract concepts, then you try to do as much behavioral training as possible. The more their cognition advances, you do more cognitive behavioral therapy, and then ultimately, as we mature, you go into spiritual types of exercises which help emotion regulation.
There's
pretty
a
broad answer. But
Yeah, well, there's so many different things, and as you said, it depends on the age and where they are developmentally. But I will tell you that there are a lot of visual supports for this kind of thing on Pinterest, and we have
Absolutely.
some of them on our board, Autism Live on Pinterest. But you can go in and find, like, there are thermometers
Oh,
that
yeah.
say, well, so when and you can, things to work on before and things to have during.
Absolutely.
Visual schedules that doctors give this to us.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
so on the scale
yeah.
of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in,
Absolutely.
right? And that we can do with the kids. And there are lessons that are cognitive behavioral therapy on Pinterest. I mean,
Yeah.
Pinterest is a
And
fabulous
we have
resource.
absolutely, and we have some of these things also in skills where you are, it's different. It's one thing to control it. It's another thing to recognize it. So
Yes.
being able to recognize in yourself that you're about to lose control of your emotions is really hard for our kids, and being able to teach them that, having them recognize all the symptoms of their own body. My heart starts going faster. I start getting hot. I feel like shivers down my back. Whatever it is, having them identify those and then to go into the calming phase, that's another thing. And also understanding why those things arose. That's a very advanced thing for all of us. It's like when we get upset about something or when we get fearful of something, do we really understand why? And that's the psychology of it, which I think really is more appropriate to our kids who are at the highest level of functioning, almost recovering, and past the teenage years or in the teenage years, because for younger children it's really hard to understand how we develop our beliefs. But so it's all different aspects of that.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we've had some people write in with more questions about some of the stuff that we've already talked about, plus we have a bunch more questions to get to. So we're going to take a short break and be right back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
Welcome everybody to our 5K, 10K run and family festival.
So the Act Today for Military Families Run and Festival is a race that benefits military children with autism. So we help a lot of the families around the country whose parents serve in the military.
I'm an autism mom, but also a military wife, and I'm so excited to be here at Act Today's 6th annual run. I've never missed one. It's something that really helps this situation. Is fabulous because there's no other organization like it.
San Diego has some of the highest concentration of military in the country, if not the world, and a lot of my friends are military and are affected by autism disorder. And so for me to do some little thing to the people that protect our freedoms is important.
It's hard enough to parent a kiddo with autism. Can you imagine parenting a child when you move on average every 2 years, you have a parent member deployed or in training? Our kids don't like change. These kids are subject to constant change.
My name's Tom Leahy. I am president of One Hope Wine. We are the title sponsor of the 6th annual Act Today Family Festival. We have been the title sponsor every single year, which we're very proud of. We've worked with Act Today for 9 years, which we are also very proud of.
My name is Megan Martin. I'm a licensed and certified genetic counselor at Lineagen, and we provide genetic testing. Lineagen are strong supporters of all families with autism, but particularly families in the military.
Double stroller, so he should get double the amount of applause.
My name is Yarick Connor. I am in the United States Navy, stationed here at Navy Information Operations Command, San Diego. I am a first-class petty officer, and been here for 3 years so far. This event is important to me. Growing up in a family, my baby sister has Down syndrome, and just living through that and being 17 years older than she is, understand the importance of family, understand the importance of how everybody is important to what we do here, not only in our country, but what we do throughout the world.
For the 10K, here are the top females. Here we go. First place with a time of 42. Arciga, bueno. Good job. And third place, Alex Rodriguez.
Go to acttoday4militaryfamilies.org and help our military families impacted by autism.
5K, red bibs are the 10K. Here comes some more finishers.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, and she's answering your questions in real time. We had a couple of further things that came in based on what we were talking about. I had shared a bullying story as we had a question about bullying. They said, Shannon, thank you for sharing the bully story. What do we tell our kids if this happens? Agree, have to educate the bullies, but what about the victim? And I sort of left that part of it out, that we all gathered around Jem and we held him up. We, you know, one of the things I remember particularly, I went running to Peter Farrig, who has, you know, been on our case since the beginning of time. He was the first therapist that ever came to our door, and I said, what do I do? And he said, you know, you're going to work as hard as you can to build him up, but that's not going to be enough, because this is the age when they start to get their self-esteem from other people than you. And so he really kicked my butt into, you know, getting him a core group of friends that was with him all the time. I went to Bryce Myler, who we've had on the show before, an amazing mom featured in the movie Recovered, and she said, if you know, find the family that has more kids than they know what to do with, or that the mom is working and they're busy, and make your house fun central so that the kids always, so that there is a group of people surrounding him. And you know, that study had just come out from UC Santa Barbara. And so I tell my child all the time, and I showed him proof. He's a smart kid, an exceptionally smart kid, and I showed him proof and said, you know, here are your IQ scores, and here's the percentage that you fall in, which means that, you know, in all likelihood, you are smarter than everyone in your school.
Right.
But you are not going to go around and tell them all that you are smarter than them. But when somebody says to you that the sky is purple and it's not, do you stand there and argue with them about it, or do you feel bad about it? We languaged all of that for him. And so he, you know, and I will tell you, we also, Alex Plank has a video that's on wrongplanet.net. We had Jem watch that and practice. We did role playing with that thing about when somebody comes up to you and says something that you can ignore, right? Because we don't want to give a paycheck to them, but often it just keeps coming. And so Alex actually with Dr. Liz Lageson did a video where she taught Alex to say, whatever, to the bully. And so we taught Jem, you know, we practiced the little shrug, the little whatever, dismissive, whatever, and to walk away. But, you know, we front load him all the time and tell him how great he is. We make sure that there are opportunities to, when there's something going on at school that he's going to be good at, we make sure that he's entered in it. Anything where he can have tangible proof that he's important, he matters, that he's good at things, we try to make sure that that's there from us and from everybody else.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess I would add two things to that. That's really important, of course, what you said, just in terms of like, and being able to kind of keep giving the individual something that gives him a sense of self-esteem, like the IQ score, that's a big thing. And for some of our kids, you can't do that, but all of our kids have something. And that's why I always tell the parents, it's time for you to find that something in your child and really build it up. There are so many kids here where if we had not encouraged the parents, I don't think they would have even found out the incredible musical talent that their child has, or the artistic talent that their child has, or the visual memory talent. I mean, some of our kids are just brilliant in some ways. It's unbelievable. One of my kids, I remember the parents were like, he really needs something to feel good about himself. And I was like, why don't you try piano? He's such a mathematician. Mm-hmm. And he turned out to be one of the most incredible pianists we've ever, and they came back a year later and he was doing concerts, I was like, good God. So that's the kind of thing that's so important, because when your child has something, then all that other stuff doesn't mean anything to them, because they're getting enough reinforcer from their own activity. Yeah. That's very important. The other thing I think, and depending on the level of the child, for Jem particularly, and kids of that level and higher, it's a matter of also, I think it helps for them to be able to understand the perspective of the bully. Being able to understand that saying mean things usually comes out of some form of fear. And where is that coming from? Like, why is the person saying this? And a lot of times when people say things like that, it's because they don't feel good enough about themselves unless they knock you down in comparison. Yeah. And as long as they knock you down, then they feel bigger. And, being able to explain that to our kids, if they're able to take that level of perspective taking, it helps, because they understand that it's coming from their own, the other person's own internal issues, and it really has nothing to do with them. But something you said, Shannon, is so important, is like, if someone comes and says to you, the sky is purple. In other words, when a bully tells you something, it isn't true. It's just not true. And that is really, really important, and you can see that with our kids, of course, and things like, you're stupid or that sort of thing. And I see it also in teenage girls who make fun of each other's weight, for instance, or there's so much stuff like that out there, and it does, when kids take it to heart, because they do think their peers are more valid than us, and that is really the problem. So having a really important peer, I guess a tight and supportive peer group around is very important. Yeah, absolutely. And then we had a question that came in, I think, that goes well with this. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, for a high schooler social situation, is it appropriate to ask for an adult to facilitate or peer to encourage inclusion? My teen joined a science-related club. Some kids horseplay, which he is not into. Few kids organize the room. He offers to help but gets turned down. So tempted to ask the kids why they turn him down so we can figure out what skills we need to work on. Thank you for your infinite wisdom. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. And yes, of course it is. In fact, I would say, for the purpose of benefiting your child, use the other children as confederates, if nothing else. They could be your best allies. So yes, absolutely, go talk to the other children and explain to them and say, I know you guys have no bad intentions here, but I'm asking you to help because you can make a difference in my child's life, and this is how you can make a difference. Yeah. Allow him to participate in this, or is there a reason? If there's something that we can work on, then let us know. If we need to help him more in regards to his skills, then we will. But then once we've done that, please allow him to participate. Yes, definitely use the other children, teach them. That's what I was saying. Teach the other children to be your allies in this, because a lot of kids, they want to know what to do and they get a sense of satisfaction from doing that. And in fact, who knows, you're helping the next generation be more empathetic, be more compassionate, and God knows we need that. Yeah. And I think, looking at the kids and seeing, there's always, as you said, there are a group of kids right now that
they want to do good.
They want
to
to
feel good. They want that reinforcement, and figuring out which one of the kids is it that wants that. And you don't even have to tell them, my child has difficulties with this, but you can just say to the child, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you ask him to help you to do this? Or when he asks, could you give him a job to do? He needs something to do. And I think if you pick the right kid, that will be easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Shannon, it's important to it's important to enlist them, I think, because when you're not there, they can continue to do good.
Yes.
So it's kind of like enlist them in the process. Like maybe if the teacher allows one day when your child isn't there, actually have a meeting with the other kids and say, give them the stories. Like tell them this is where he started out.
Yeah.
He had no language. He did this. He's worked thousands of hours to get to where he is. These are the areas that he's really good at. These are the areas that he still has issues with. He's going to work thousands more hours to try to cope and be able to manage and so on. Who wants to be part of helping him get there?
Yeah.
And if you do, these are the things that you can do. And it's really that simple. And I'm a strong believer that most of us start just to have good. We all come from a place of good. And I think it's if we have ways to be good, if it's right in our path, we will engage in that.
Absolutely. All right, I want to move on to another question here. My son has been diagnosed with autism and sensory disorder. My husband and I are finding it very difficult to find any funding to offset the cost for child care. We're paying right now for speech and OT therapy, daycare half a day, and now the daycare wants to charge us 4 times the price to watch our child for 3.5 hours, $2,000 a month for one-on-one care because he is acting out with hitting, kicking, screaming at some of his peers sometimes. We are sinking with the expense. Check state services and we don't qualify because it's income driven. Please help direct us. This is all new to us.
Yeah, that's the one that I was reading earlier and shaking my head because it just breaks my heart. So I want to guide you. I'm really glad we got to this question because I felt very passionate when I read this. I want to guide you. There is nothing more important right now in your child's life than to get him into an ABA program. Nothing. There's nothing you can do more than that would benefit him more than getting him into an ABA program. Now, I don't think I know the child's age, but if you get him into an ABA program, and please feel free to get in touch with us offline. If you get him into a comprehensive ABA program, then you can actually take your child to the ABA center and the therapists will work with him around the clock for up to 40 hours, depending on how much is recommended for him. And you will not need daycare and you will not need speech because that will happen during his ABA. And I don't know if you need OT or not. You may or may not, depending on a good evaluation. But don't make the assumption that you just need to do speech and OT and that's going to take care of it because every child with autism gets speech and OT. No. Every child with autism should get ABA, first of all, and then you can decide whether or not speech and OT is necessary. You will not need daycare because basically, at least I know with CARD, and we have over 100 and something clinics, but our offices, our centers are open from, I want to say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. So we are able to do a lot of this and it is all funded. Most of the states now have insurance coverage and I don't know where you are, but if you let us know, we can try to reach out and take care of it and help you. Once you have that in place, it becomes possible for you to do a lot of other things. Giving $2,000 a month for daycare is ridiculous. That's the kind of money that should be going to much more important things for your child, which would be therapies of different types. So. And I think you would still qualify for some respite care depending on what state you're in. So, maybe reach out please to Shannon and let us know where you are and we will do our best to try to get your child started and help.
And I've got your email, so we're not sharing the question because I've got your email address so that I can write to you. And I'm assuming that this child is under the age of 3.
I hope so.
Only because between speech, they're paying for the speech and OT, because everybody who hears this, I want you to know that in the United States, when your child turns 3, the funding for those things comes from your school district. So if you have a child who's over the age of 3, you need to go to your school district. For them, you'll have to do an IEP process, and they're going to tell you a bunch of things that are not what you just heard here and what is the best case scenario for your child. But they will pay for speech and OT. Nobody needs to be paying for speech and OT out of pocket. I will tell you too that depending on which state you live, you're going to be looking at different insurance things. But there are in almost every state now, there is a type of insurance that you can pay for that is less expensive than this $2,000 a month that you're paying for to wash down the toilet, to have somebody sit with your child and do nothing.
And anyway, it's so important because your child is hitting, kicking, and screaming.
Yeah, and it's not going to get better. It's not
Unless
like
you
the
do
autism
the ABA.
fairy
Exactly.
comes in and goes bink and it all goes away.
Exactly.
But as you said, take your child to the center. I think that is going to be the answer to all of your issues. So I will be emailing you. But I'm going to move on to another question. Hi, Shannon. I'm finding it difficult to complete my 5-year-old mildly autistic and verbal son's toileting process as he is playing with the water. He goes on his own when he needs to pee or poo, but after finishing, he is playing with water or the tap, and we need to verbally prompt him to close the tap and come out. Or at times, we have to go in, close the tap, and drag him out. I've been trying with a picture schedule for around a month, but he is playful about it as he likes water very much. Can you please advise what I can do about this? I wish Nancy were here, but, right?
Yeah, Wyatt has a very significant love for water, that's for sure. Let's assume that this is not as obsessive as that is, but
yes.
What I would suggest that you do right now is you can do a number of different things, but you can start with just having a timer. So basically, I think the best thing for you would actually, I don't know if your child would pay attention. You'd have to figure out what kind of timer. If it was an egg timer, for instance, the child could be taught to just turn it over, and that'll give your child, let's say, 1 or 3 minutes to wash their hands. When the sand is finished, they need to leave. You would have to teach them that. If that's if it's not intrusive enough, if it's not, let's say, visible enough to your child, in other words, if your child continues to play with water and doesn't pay attention to the sand ending, you could also teach your child to put, let's say, a kitchen timer that buzzes, and when that goes off, you could then teach the child that they have to leave. And you have to, and I'll talk about reinforcers in a minute. Another thing you could do is you could actually place a timer in a way that the child cannot reach the timer, and it becomes an aversive that they are trying to avoid and escape. So in other words, you could put a buzzer in the bathroom that goes off and is annoying, and so the child actually turns the water off and leaves because they want to get rid of the buzzer sound. There's a lot of different things you can do. You could also, for instance, set a timer outside the bathroom. So in order for the child to turn the buzzer off, they'd have to leave the bathroom to turn it off. The concept here, and there's a variety of things, but just to give you the basic formula or the concept is playing with water is more reinforcing than anything else that you've so far given. And what you need to do is you need to reduce the reinforcement value of playing with water and instead give a higher reinforcer for stopping and leaving. So the suggestion that I had with regards to, like, let's say, if the child actually leaves the bathroom, turns the water off and leaves the bathroom when a timer goes off, and then gets a major reward, that reward has to be bigger than the self-stimulatory reinforcer that the child's getting from water. That's very important. Or the other example I gave was kind of like making a buzzer sound that the child has to leave in order to get an reward. That reduces the reinforcing aspects of the self-stimulatory stuff, because now there's like a annoying sound in the background. So there's all these different things that you can do, but the concept being there has to be a reward that's worth it for the child. If you can, let's think, if there's some other thing that is highly reinforcing, let's say, maybe something musical, maybe something visual that involves water, like a lava lamp, or let's say something that, maybe playing with a water gun outside in the backyard, something like that. And the child only has access to that if they turn off the water within 3 minutes and go outside. That would work. So you just need to make sure the reinforcer that you're giving your child is contingent upon them leaving as soon as an event prompts them to leave. The event should probably be a timer, because when we get engaged in self-stimulatory stuff, we don't know how time passes. And so the child, we want to remove you as the stimulus that has to always prompt the child. We want to get them to learn to do this themselves. It could be just a little buzzer on their watch where they just press a button and then they wash their hands, and when it goes beep, 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 they stop and leave. And then they get to do some other activity that is highly reinforcing.
And key, as you said, that it's got to be something that's more reinforcing than the water, and you can't give that to them any other time, because if you do, it will lose its power.
Exactly.
All right, now we're in the rapid fire section where we're going to answer questions as fast as we can.
Sure.
I have a child who is 17 and a half years old. He is on a grade level 2 and low speech. He's in high school now, public school. They are trying to take away his speech, PT and OT. They are saying he has reached his level. He is still improving. I do not want to give up. They say his speech will never get better. To introduce him to an augmentative device at this age would be very hard, I would think. I can hear you, Mike Hipple. I would love for this person to write and tell me what their address is so I can send you. We have a viewer who uses an augmentative device and who's been on the show, and he's written a book about it, and he has very strong feelings about not waiting any longer, that now, if you have not given your child an augmentative device, that now is the moment to do that,
right,
no matter what age.
Right.
So Mike, I heard you in my head say, please.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say that at 17 and a half, there's the most valuable thing you probably can do for your child is to give them an aug device. Now, let's talk about where he is, because he's at grade level 2 and he has very low speech. Now, and you're upset because they want to take away speech and OT. I'm going to tell you something a little radical. Let them take away speech and OT. Okay, let them take it away. The only reason you need speech is for someone to teach the aug device. You can also get an ABA expert to teach the aug device. You can also teach the aug device. Your priorities change when your child is 17 and a half. Your priorities are no longer trying to teach the same things. Now you have to teach different things because the child is 17 and a half. So at 17 and a half, you're no longer looking at, oh, can I get him to grade level 3? Who cares at this point? What you're trying to do for a 17 and a half year old are probably the following things. Think about this. You're probably thinking about trying to get basic communication. That's the aug device. Why? Because if you don't have basic communication, the child will have a lot of aggressive behaviors because they'll be very frustrated. They won't know how to express their needs, and that'll lead to frustration, which will lead to aggression or various other types of problems. So communication, basic communication, functional communication becomes the most important thing for your child. Next is probably safety. Next is starting to teach something vocational, because and daily living. All of those types of things. Teaching the child, for instance, to be independent and dress themselves, make food for themselves, daily living skills, and also to be able to actually start doing something that is of a career type that would give the child some sense of satisfaction. All those types of things become incredibly important. Nothing, though, is as important as the aug device, because the aug device is the entry portal for your child to communicate with the rest of the world. And without that, life is very hard. They will not understand what is requested of them. They will not understand how to communicate to other people what they want, all that sort of stuff. So many of my kids, when I see an individual who's a teenager, anywhere, like 15 to 20, and they don't have an aug device and their speech communication is very low, they inevitably get frustrated. Even the sweetest, loveliest kids, They get frustrated because nobody understands them and they can't express themselves. And when they're frustrated, they put their head through the glass, they punch the wall, they aggress, they just are frustrated and they have to let that out somehow. So please, the most important thing you can do right now is kind of divert your attention. Don't worry about trying to teach basic school stuff. That's not the point. The point right now is to change and focus on the things your child needs. And so the OG device is incredibly important. And yeah, no, it's not going to be hard at all. He's going to love it. It's going to be the most incredible change you'll see. So many of my kids pick up OG devices immediately because they just love to be able to communicate now. And there's a variety of different OG devices. Make sure someone is working with him who knows how to do this. We don't want to add a frustration where the child is now frustrated because they can't use the OG device. When you first start using these devices, it's really important to just actually have one simple thing you're asking for with one button, and then you can make it pretty sophisticated over time.
Absolutely. Our next question can I just say too that I'd love it if you would watch 2 weeks ago, and I want to make sure that I tell Dr. Grant-Pichet about this on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We had a mom on who did designs by Siri. Her daughter, Siri, was a card client way at the very beginning. And she told the story of how she has developed a jewelry business for her daughter.
Amazing.
I'm going to make sure that you have some wine rings today. I brought them in with me. But watch and hear that mom's story about what she did to find, every child is going to be different, but to find what it was that clicked her daughter on.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to say, we have some of our most severely autistic individuals doing art pieces that are being sold for thousands of dollars. I mean, and it is so satisfying for the child. So it's important.
And I wanted to get to one more question, but we're out of time. We're out of time.
Okay.
So we're going to save these because there was something that goes kind of hand in hand with that, but functional communication, right?
Absolutely.
So important. Okay, we're going to get to these other ones next week. But we thank you so much for being here.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
And always for being with us. We're going to take a break now and go to the A Word. This is a documentary following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and you can drop in and see how early intensive ABA looks in a home. Take a look, and then we're going to be back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh Jackson will be joining me. Vince Redmond, licensed and marriage family therapist, will be with us, and Kathy Gott is going to be with us as well. So stick with us right after the A Word.
Social ID questions are just basic questions that anyone would ask you, like what's your name, what's your age, how are you, and we're teaching him, to reply. My name's Jack Riley. I'm 2 years old. And when we ask him, how are you, he's supposed to say I'm fine or I'm good. Just so it's a conversation starter. I didn't probe through what he knows yet, but he might surprise me. I don't know. He always does. How old are you? 2. Oh, wow. 2 like this? Can you do it? Oh, that's a good try. Can you do the fingers? Let me try. 2. There you go. What's your name? All right, well, I guess he knows those. Hey, what's your name? My name is Jack Riley. Yay! There's Jack Riley! Woohoo, you're so smart! You're so smart! Whew. Yay! Where's Jack Riley? Oh, there he is! Should we show Dad your cool new trick? Hey, Jack Riley, who is that? It's Susan. Yeah, who's this? Who's this? It's Daddy. Yay! Who's this? It's Nose. No, who is this? Who is this? It's a baby. It's a bat. It's a dog. And my time will come. It's son. Tiger. His mom was saying he was getting so excited that he's discovering new like phonetic sounds on his own, like with things that he knows, like dinosaur and pancake. Hey, what's this one? Duh, duh.
Dinosaur.
Good job. What about buh, buh?
Book.
Good job. How about this one?
Ball. Book.
What about this?
Car.
What about this one?
Book.
Good. Nice. What about this guy? Jack Riley, where'd you go? What's this?
It's a potato.
Yeah, so.
It's a potato.
Let's go for a bike ride. There he goes. Wow. Suzanne's so impressed. Oh, say hi. Oh. Are you all done, Jack? No, stop. Are you all done? Then you need to sit on the bike. Come sit on the bike.
Can't pretend to play.
No. No, Stop. Come back.
Jack Riley requests the bike but doesn't play with it. Since he is no longer being compliant with Jessica, they leave, which begins a tantrum.
Okay, then we're all done. We're all done then. Come on.
Honey, what's up? My son's auditioning for a fellow right now.
It is a fight.
Jack, calm down. Okay, come here. I forget. Trying to be the hero.
Mike is supposed to ignore the tantrum because giving him attention may prolong the tantrum and make it worse.
Every time we asked him to do anything, he sat down. And sort of, not violent is the wrong word, but roughly, to where, he almost threw his head back on cement a couple times. Where I grabbed his arms and lowered him because he was going to throw his head back. I thought, I have some tools that I use from you guys. None of them worked. The only thing I could do. I think it was more energy. You know what I mean? He's cooped up, and then there's no way I'm doing what you asked me right now. I got to see lawn. I think he just was like, I'm not doing what you do. I'm going to play right now. And so we tried that to where differentiate. If you go on the lawn, you can play, but you're going to walk with me, and then you can play. No, it did not work. It was sort of a setback in my mind. Like I hadn't seen this behavior. So I had no idea what to do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's why we're here.
I know. So not to make it dire, but yesterday to me was sort of a rough day. It was surprising to me. I know I make a lot of mistakes when I'm with him when he does stuff like that, but I know somewhere in here the tools are there. But yesterday I was like, they just all went out the window because he was just nothing was working. He was the boss yesterday. I couldn't figure it out. You do the A-word thing, and sometimes I'm set back when he does something brilliant. He is who he is, and he'll be who he'll be. But I want him to go on dates and not be necessarily the 180 IQ guy who's focused on one thing. He does things that I just go, look at Cheryl and go, oh my God. I don't think I can do that now.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat. And then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay? And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's a U.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay? So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good.
What would you do if your child was hurting?
If your family's future was uncertain.
If help seemed out of reach.
Have you been given no hope?
Taka means I am not alone in this.
This is the reality for families affected by autism. And today, the number of children with autism is growing more rapidly than ever. Taka unites these families and shows that they do not have to fight this battle alone.
Our oldest son, Jared, who has autism, when we first took him to the doctor to get the diagnosis, you know, it's so sad because they offer you nothing. There's no help, there's no hope.
One of the things that you learn with autism is being very grateful for even the small milestones. You know, when you first get the diagnosis, you go through all the range of emotions. You know, this can't be happening. Why is this happening? You have to get to a point where it's the emotion that has to be leading is, what can I do? The first thing that struck me was walking to a room and seeing, oh my gosh, we're not alone. And there is this very strong community that's already set. And something I still today associate with Taka the most is hope. To me, that's what Taka means. Taka means hope.
It's like you've got all these dreams and goals of what your son's gonna do, and you get your diagnosis and you're sent home. And that's it. There's no plan of action. There's no, here's autism, here's what we're gonna do to make your life better and help him. It's strictly go home and try to process it and go on the internet. It was devastating, and you just, you know, you go through this 3-week of depression and then you snap out of it. You have to. And then you start making phone calls and trying to figure out what is autism and what are we gonna do? And then we found Taka, and it was life-changing.
Autism, there really is no definitive answer. It is trying to find the resources that are out there that can assist you to help your child so that, you know, you just don't feel so helpless at those particular moments.
There was direction and there was hope and there was a little ray of sunshine that he's gonna be okay and we're gonna be okay. I always look back and think we would never be where we are. Carson wouldn't be where he is at without Taka.
So 13 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism, and that put our whole family into a tailspin. There were so many different ideas and things that were not proven. Nobody knew what guidance to give us. We had no direction.
Is it really? I have questions about that. But I'm trying to stay upbeat and positive.
Hope springs eternal.
And, you know, and I want to be respectful because I know that, the way it's shaken down, there, 51% of the country voted another way than how it went, and we have elections in our country that are built on a certain way, and they have been forever. It's not a shock to anybody, but I think what's clear is that we're a country divided, and
which is, I think, a very disturbing thing to people this morning. And
Yes.
I've had several encounters this morning. I was in 7-Eleven, and a gentleman that works there from Sri Lanka, when I saw the downcast look on his face, I said, "How are you?" And he said, "I'm devastated." And he said, "I have plans to bring my mother here. I don't know what it means." And there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, have an intense anxiety this morning.
Yeah.
Going
Well,
on.
let's face it. Everybody's been having anxiety for weeks and months, and I think there's a lot of question marks. I'm going to speak for myself as an autism mom. And as somebody who is concerned about the autism community and services, because I know what a difference services made for me, and I know how hard everybody has fought in the last 5 years to get services, and I really believe that based on it's like a shock to me, because there was always the possibility that either side could win. There was always the possibility that the House and the Senate could go one way. I just don't think that we really talked about if all of that happened, because I don't think anybody saw that. And there will be fallout from that, and it will directly affect the autism community.
Yeah, once again, and kudos to you for being involved in working on Hillary Clinton's disability plan and autism plan, which was comprehensive, which provided for so many things.
Well, and I want to look. We keep a stiff upper lip. This is what we do. We know as autism moms, everything doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out. But I will tell you that I did put in some time helping a lot of people to make a lot of things that I thought, ooh, we're going to get someplace.
Yeah.
And today, I'm not saying that we're not going to get there. I just don't know.
Right.
I just don't know.
Right.
And I'm just going to have to live with that uncomfortable, and we're just going to have to all work.
And maybe, people weren't informed enough about her autism plan that needed to be in our community, because I found a lot of people didn't know about her plan. And that's in the past, and we have to look ahead.
That's right.
And we've actually got a great guest today. We've got two great guests. We've got Vince Redmond, who is always with us every month.
He's a licensed marriage and
family therapist, and
I need one of those today.
Yes, and can talk about some difficult times coming up for our kids.
Yes.
The holidays.
Yep.
Today is Wyatt's birthday. He's 15. I want to touch on that a little bit later. And we have Kathy Gott here.
Yeah.
And Kathy is a real autism warrior mom, pioneer in our community. And she's now the president of Education Spectrum, Inc. And really exciting things. You may have known of her from her son Danny and Danny's Farm, which was a wonderful program.
Amazing.
And we're going to talk to her about this very issue of services and falling off that
especially
proverbial cliff.
transitioning services, going from being a school system to, as you said, falling off the cliff.
And let me tell you, folks, I never saw this day coming at 15 and being in 9th grade in high school. And I know that in a split second, it's going to be 18, and then it's going to be 21.
Yep. Oh man,
so these are whether your child is 2 or whether they are 18 and you're listening today, very important things to be aware of, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've got a couple of news stories. Do we want to address those really quickly before we bring Kathy in?
Yeah.
Really quickly. Okay. And I was thinking of you particularly for this one. The headline is Little Sister Defends Her Brother with Autism After a Student Called Him Weird.
Were you thinking of me with David?
I totally was thinking of
my
you.
younger brother had Down syndrome and lived with my family until he died, and I helped raise him. And so I can relate to this one.
Absolutely. So Lex Camilleri, I'm sure I slaughtered that, took a letter to the school's student council and read it out loud to her class. She has a brother who is on the autism spectrum, and she's 6 years old, and she just could not stand by when somebody called him weird. Her mother, Sophie, was informed of the letter by a teacher who approached her after school. That's when she posted it to Facebook, and it's been going viral everywhere. You guys have a chance to read it. In the note, she said, "On Monday, I felt very sad because a girl in my class said that my brother was weird. My brother has autism and is not weird. I would like it if we could learn about all disabilities in school so that everybody understands that some people are different, but we should all be treated the same."
Yeah. The mom said that her brother was older than her. It's all she's ever known. She's only known autism. She doesn't see it as different. And she's lived and breathed it from the beginning. That's just how it is, which just reminds me of a moment last night when I was talking to my son and I said, why is today important? And I said, who's being elected? And he said, the president. And I said, what kind of president? And he said, the first woman president. And then I said, and who was what is special about Barack Obama? And he said, he's Barack Obama. And I said, but what's special about him? What's the color of his skin? He said, his skin is dark tan. It wasn't he's black. It wasn't he's the first. It's just he has dark skin, tan skin. That's the difference.
Well, sometimes having a quote unquote social deficit, which means that you don't understand the social rules, means that you actually know the truth, that you haven't been force fed the pile of El Toro poo-poo that goes around, right? Sometimes our kids have it exactly right, and it's us that because we subscribe to these things that have the real deficit. Let's be honest about that. Okay, other story here. Paradise Valley Resort offers a new option for adults with autism.
This is Billings, Montana, I
Yes.
think it?
Eric's Ranch, it's an amazing place, 7,500 square foot home. And because the folks who own this and run this have a child who was transitioning and that they didn't know what to do with him, they saw a need. And so they have created a very unique program where it's a ranch that people can go to, and they have kids who live there and who have the opportunity to work there.
Yes,
which is amazing.
Yeah,
So
he's their son, Eric, is now 25, and obviously this is something that they felt necessity is the mother of invention, and it says that the residents. Members are moderate to high functioning. Yearly fees run just north of $30,000. That includes rent, utilities, 2 meals a day, transportation, social activities like hiking and biking. Members may also work at the resort and can earn up to $15,000 to help pay for the program. So, this is one such program. Clearly, we need many of these.
But I love this because this paves the way. I love that the jobs that they place them in are according to their interests, that they can be concierge, chefs, tour guides, and lead activities such as horseback rides. And what I love is that they talk about the fact that the guests so enjoy the interaction that they're having with these young people. And I just think this is a vision for all of us of something that can be. So hope, hope, hope. Now, but we also, before we bring in our guests, we want to mention that there is a grant phase right now for Autism Speaks. They're going to be giving away 685 iPad Airs. This is a program that is funded by proceeds. GameStop had an April in-store donation campaign, and they have enough. Those of you who went to GameStop and you gave $1 here, $1 there, they have enough to pay for 685 iPad Airs. They're going to folks who are financially disadvantaged with autism, and the application process is open now. It opened on Monday. It is only open until the 11th. So you need to get right on this. There is a link at some point today. Samantha will have that up on our Facebook, but you can also search Autism Speaks iPad Air grant. The applications must be submitted by the person with autism or an immediate family member of the person with autism or a licensed social worker or therapist. It's called the Technology Grant. The review committee will review the applications and select the iPad award recipients. All applicants selected to receive the iPad Air will be contacted by December 15th. If selected, the iPad will be shipped via UPS directly to the address provided on the application, so make sure you put the application address that you want. There is a place to go if you have questions. It's iPads@autismspeaks.org. Please note that emails will take up to 12 hours to receive a response, so you really don't have a whole lot of time for questions. Just fill out the grant application, and you know, I always say if there's an opportunity to talk about what your circumstances are, take it.
Right. And I just want to remind everyone, as Executive Director of ACT Today, and Shannon, you as a board member, that we have an assisted technology program, and we give out iPads as well. So you can go on the ACT Today website to learn more about our program.
There you go. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Kathy Gott is here with us, and we're really excited that she's going to be here. And don't forget that Vince Redmond is going to be with us a little bit later on, so that we don't take up drinking. Yeah. And we're keeping our sense of humor. Yeah. All right, Kathy Gott, amazing, amazing woman and amazing mom, going to be with us right after these messages. Stick with us.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children with all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago. There were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grandpichet. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grandpichet.
as what happens. Nancy's having a snack, and we're welcoming our fabulous guest here, Kathy Gott.
Here we go. This is live television at its finest. And hopefully everybody can be heard. Samantha was in here helping us with some technical stuff. Can we hear everybody, Samantha?
Everybody's good.
Seen
Everybody's
and heard.
good. All right.
Okay, so here we are with Kathy. Thanks for joining our chaotic morning.
Happy to be here. Wouldn't be any different than the rest of my life.
I know, isn't it the truth?
Yes.
Thank God, as autism moms, we get that, right?
We get it. Don't
Chaos
sweat
is
the little
just
stuff.
chaos is just part of the plan. Kathy, you're currently the president of Education Spectrum Inc. Tell us what that is.
Well, when our children were just diagnosed and we were trying to navigate.
And when you say children,
well, they were born my husband's son, so my stepson CJ was born in 1988 and diagnosed in 1992.
Okay.
And then our son together, Danny, was born in 1993 and diagnosed in 1994.
I was totally unaware that your husband Jim Gott, and tell us who Jim is, because he is a well-known figure.
Well, I'm very proud of my husband. He's much more humble, but I get to brag about him.
Okay, go ahead and brag.
So I went, and also while this was going on, we met and married in 1990, and he was pitching for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Okay.
And he had pitched for many years before that, so I caught him like the last 5 seasons of his major league career.
Okay.
And we were going, that was pretty crazy, going through the diagnostics and finding services.
So CJ was how old at that time?
CJ was almost 3 when we got married.
Okay, and Danny is your son together.
Right, and he wasn't born until 93. Right. We married in 90.
And Danny was diagnosed at what age?
Pretty early, because by that time I had already been in many interventions and IEPs and learning that whole process in regional center, and I was pretty hyper vigilant about looking for signs.
Right. Okay. So now we've jumped back because I was asking you about Education Spectrum Inc., but let's just stay on this track for a minute and follow your family's journey and then your journey. So tell us then, what was life like? That must have been pretty chaotic. Your husband is Major League Baseball. He's in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. And you've got 2 kids on the spectrum. What was that like?
Well, there were 6 kids altogether. And I like to remind people that it's, you do spin a lot around the special needs, but there's, everybody has their needs in there. So it was like chaos on steroids. And, but lots of love and the incredible team we had around us. That was, and to kind of tie it together, that was the birth of Education Spectrum, were these incredible women that I met, teachers and educational therapists that were helping us when we saw this gap where an experience that I went through where there was no one there to guide me. We had an advocate and we had a service coordinator, all these little pieces, but there was really no one overseeing
the coach,
whole,
besides you.
The coach, and actually helping you through the day-to-day challenges of sleep and potty training and behaviors and just everything that goes along with it. So I know, jumping forward to today, which I'm going to explain to you, because here we are more than 20 years later, and these kids have aged out into adult services.
Danny is how old now?
Danny is 20, he'll be 24. CJ is 28.
Okay. And how are they doing?
They're doing great. They're very different, and their challenges are different. Some the same, some very different. CJ now lives in Pennsylvania with his mom, so Danny is here in California running Danny's farm.
And okay, just for a minute, tell us about Danny's farm, because that deserves a little bit of attention.
I can't not smile when I talk about Danny's farm. It's a labor of love. I heard you earlier in the segment talking about this hotel resort, and it's the same kind of thing. You've got to harness what your kid loves, and Danny has always had this tremendous affinity for animals and farm animals and petting zoos, and of course he'd sit on his computer all by himself if
and stay there if he had what he really wanted.
Right.
But he does love this. He really loves it. And we employ adults with disabilities, and we partnered with Cal Poly Pomona, and we are on the campus there, which is amazing with all these student volunteers. They've even created a Danny's Farm class on the curriculum in the ag department, where students are trained to socialize the animals, and volunteer at the farm. So it's just growing, and I mean it's amazing.
And I had the pleasure of actually going to meet you several years back and see it in action, and see Danny and some of the other teens, young adults, young people working with these animals, bringing them into a petting situation at an elementary school, and it was just so lovely. It was such a lovely experience.
It's every day is just a gift when you're doing this kind of work, and to so many, but really to our family, it's really
And
beautiful.
for a lot of people, that would have been enough. You know, like we've got Danny's Farm and that's all we're going to do.
Yeah.
But instead, you move off to Education Spectrum, and now you've got even a new program, Transitions. So talk to us a little bit about what exactly Education Spectrum Inc. does, and then talk to us about what the Transitions.
You got it. Well, Education Spectrum was born first in 1996. Danny's Farm was born in 2007. So Education Spectrum is a group of clinicians. Many of you might know Dr. Lori Stevens, and she's pretty well known as one of the best clinical psychologists specializing in autism, and so she does anything from diagnostics to just you name it. And they're amazing human beings, and we're vendored through Regional Center for many of our programs, and most recently we now have a program for young adults, and it's vendored, so really excited about that. So we provide, it's a center-based program, and we have a lot of social skills classes, community integration, just...
What ages?
Well, from birth, from diagnostics, to 25 is what we're vendored for, but we do have a few clients older who private pay, but we are now up to 25. We were up to 18 for many years, so I'm excited to bring on, it's tough to get a new program vendor today, so it just shows the need that it's, just because you turn 18, it doesn't mean you don't need any services.
Right.
So that's exciting. And more recently, Nancy said something kind of reminded me that when we met last time, I was saying that I was going to kind of slow down.
That's what you told me. You said, I've done this Danny's Farm thing, and this has been great, and Jim was in Phoenix, and I'm going to go be a wife for a while.
Right. And
what happened to that, Kathy?
Well, life happened to that. And interestingly, and it's such a cycle of life, because when I went through the experience of not having a coach and a navigation guide when the kids were beginning to get services, I went through this transition time when, in particular with Danny, when he turned 18. And I wasn't prepared for what I went through. And one thing that I don't think people are really addressing is the emotional, the grieving. I mean, I'm very open about this because I think it's something that we really need to talk to, is about just our own mental health issues as our kids are aging out. It taps I can only speak for myself, and whenever I share this, I hear such similar stories. So I know we're hitting on something big.
You are striking a nerve big time.
Well,
my son's 15, just
Scary.
turning today is his birthday, and my husband died 9 months ago.
Oh.
And I have been petrified about what's going to happen to him.
It's paralyzing, really.
Paralyzed with fear. And Shannon will tell you, because she's been there with me, giving me emotional support. But if you think you don't know what's going to happen to your child if something happens to you, because I don't have a backup, and it's terrifying. And there are a lot of parents in my situation.
Well, I'll back up a second, because it's been a couple of years that I was introduced to this organization called ETA, E-T-T-A, and it's named after a woman named Etta. Her last name is Israel, but it has nothing to do with the state of Israel.
Okay.
Etta was a name of a woman who left her in her will that she wanted such a program to care for adults with developmental disabilities. And this is a bold statement because, as you can imagine, I've run across a lot of programs in and around Los Angeles, and this is leaps and bounds by far the most quality care I have ever seen. And once I gained the knowledge of what could be, I took a lot of my power back. I didn't feel so helpless because for me, for my comfort, I need my ducks in order. I need a plan. I need to know if something happens to me, what's going to happen with Danny, and that gives me comfort. Yeah. So I fought through the pain and the sadness of, I mean, I'm just going to say it. You know, when Danny was 15 and I would see groups of adults at the mall, and you know, I'd think like, oh, well, that's not going to be my son. That's not going to happen to me. I mean, that is the I'm ashamed a little to even say it out loud, but I think it's so important to just be real. And that is my Danny. Yeah. That is absolutely, those are his peeps, and that is our life. And of course, what's so important about grieving is coming to acceptance. And I am in full acceptance today.
Because so much of our early years, our children's early years, and our efforts are on recovering them. And we are sold that dream by so many people, and it's not possible for every child. It just isn't.
It's just, I shy away from that language.
They can all get better.
Yeah,
we know that.
But the word recovery or cure, it just does not work for me.
And when that dream is shattered, it's devastating.
It is. And even with as evolved that I'd like to think that I am, and you know, in tune with myself, this transition to adulthood, I would say, was equal, if not greater, in pain than the diagnosis. Because for me, it was on such a multiple level, like, oh my God, this is the rest of his life. Oh my God, I'm not gonna, your own mortality comes into play. And where is everyone? My school system is gone, and all these people that were surrounding us. Suddenly you get a new service coordinator that deals with transition age, and then you get another one. I mean, everything starts over. And I have special needs trusts and IHSS and SLS, and what are we going to do with this? And putting it all together and knowing what to do first. There is an order that you need to do things. There was no one there to guide me. Mm-hmm. I had to do my homework, and it was my full-time job for 2 years. And I am very happy to say that Danny lives in his own home with full-time supported living services. He works. He is an active member of the community. He volunteers at the Humane Society. He's learning at a pet store to work the cash register. I mean, his life is, he has a girlfriend, Spencer Hart, the opera singer. It is the sweetest.
It was Jill's birthday yesterday.
Yes, I love Jill. So Jill and I are planning the weddings.
Okay.
Anyway,
good.
Very
we'll be
excited.
there.
Jewish mother,
my son will want to be at he loves Spencer.
Yeah. Who doesn't? To get in line, son.
I know. He's 13, so I think he gets it that she's too old for him. But he loves her. He loves her.
Oh, so where does this leave? Okay, how can your experience now help others through what you're doing?
Well, first, what I'd like to do, if I can explain to you the reality of the numbers. I want you to all be, I want to educate you, if you will allow me for a moment.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we are not prepared as a community, and I am getting very active on a city, county, and state level to educate our legislative folks who can really make change, okay? So among the over 75,000 regional center clients with ASD, 80% are under 22 years of age and living with their parents, okay? The next few years will bring an unprecedented number of individuals with ASD and other developmental disabilities transitioning to independence. Nationally, an estimated 50,000 Americans with ASD will turn 18 each year. So, you know, we all hear about this 1 in 10,000 went to 1 in 5,000 went, now it's 1 in 68 children. But this is what's happening in real numbers and what's going to be hitting our communities all over the country. I'm focused on Los Angeles because it's my home and where I love. So in California, the number of adult ASD regional center clients will more than triple during the next 3 years and will exceed 20,000 by the year 2018. Lastly, regional center, which serves only 20% of individuals. You know, a lot of people don't qualify for regional centers, so it's a much bigger population. We'll see a more than a 300% increase in the number of adults with autism spectrum disorder in the next decade. So let's be real. I mean, we are not prepared. Housing, higher education, and all the adaptation. I mean, what does it take for any of us to live a full and happy life and live to our fullest potential? Meaningful jobs, family, social connections.
A safe place to live, a
safe,
roof over our head,
food, right? Just from basics to, and the organization with which I'm working embraced what I'm getting across, that it can't go on like this. First of all, people need, there's a bridge missing because there are great programs out there and there are a lot of entitlements for our kids that people like Harvey and Connie Lapin, who wrote the Lanterman Act with other great folks and, you know, whose children with autism are my age, it's our turn to take the next step and really expand and educate, because there's no turning back. We're not going to be shipping off our kids with all the laws that are in place. They are our neighbors, they are our children, they are our nieces and nephews, they are our cousins, there are, I mean, I don't need to go on, but the numbers speak for themselves and this is real. So we created a program at ETA called Transitions. And it does just that in terms of connecting us all from transportation to jobs to on a very individualized, customized basis. And again, I'm reaching out to public entities so that we can not just do this on a private pay, really make this available countywide. So stay tuned for that, because my dear friend Catherine Barger just took Mike Antonivich's seat in the 5th District. Sheila Kuehl's office, another county supervisor, helped us with seed money for this program. So we're going to band together and we're going to expand services countywide for our tender population, because it is growing and we need to be there. I don't know. This is why I'm not with my husband in the Dominican this week, because I needed to be here today.
Yeah, you've got a mission. You've got a purpose and a calling.
And this is amazing. We're really out of time, but you've given a bunch of information, but we want to tell people where to go to get more information.
Okay.
So let's start with ETA and the Transitions program. Where do they go to?
Oh, great. The link. I don't know. Am I in the way?
There it is.
Right
okay. Terrific. Well, that is the phone number to ETA, 818-985-3882, or the website eta.org has tons of information, and specifically you can just click on the Transitions link and you'll be guided to the proper people. Education Spectrum, we're located in Altadena, and we also contract with several school districts doing training and for teachers and attending IEPs. So
for Danny's Farm?
Danny's Farm, at dannysfarm.org, lots of information. And Alec Baldwin bought us a truck and trailer.
Yes,
so we
I remember
can
that.
go anywhere in the county
Yes.
to the most
We
neediest kids, and thanks to our amazing, generous donors,
Yeah.
we have them sponsored many times. So reach out to us.
We love
That's
the
what we're
Baldwin
here
brothers.
for.
You know, they've helped out with Act Today, and
They're
Atticus, and Stephen and Daniel.
Good,
love them,
good
love them.
people.
Well, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank
I
you
mean,
so
we could
much.
talk for hours and
Yes,
hours and
we
hours,
really
but you're such a role model in our community, and such admiration we have for you
Yes,
and the work you're doing.
Well, it's mutual. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist, is going to be joining us. So stick with us.
I am Alexis Weinman at the Future Horizons Super Conference in Dallas, Texas. It helped me in a way because it was a format that I was not used to. Like, I had never curled my hair before. I've never worn heels. I didn't know what foundation was. And it was just, it was a very, like, it helped me more in a business sense. Like, I know how to present myself in front of people now. That's something my mom drilled into my head. I have trouble sometimes with it. Like, you introduced yourself to me downstairs, and so I immediately, like, and I've heard of you before, so I was like, I know this person, I can make eye contact with this person. And if I'm talking to someone I don't know, or if I'm listening to someone give a speech, most of the time my head will be down. I don't look at people in the eye, but if it's someone I know I need to make eye contact with, I make eye contact. But my mom growing up, she, especially after the diagnosis, she would always like grab my hand if I was like, you know, looking everywhere else but her, and she'd like say, look me in the eye. And so she wouldn't let go of my hand until I looked her in the eye. I do feel like I have to do play poet because, you know, sometimes there'll be jokes I don't understand, but I'll laugh at anyway. There will be situations that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm gonna have to play along anyway. And I think I just found out, like, I'm just a tremendously amazing liar. Like, I can pretend like I'm uncomfortable with something when in actuality I am screaming inside, or I know the moment I get back to my dorm room I'm gonna start screaming or having a meltdown or something like that. But I also know that there is a time and a place because there isn't any safe rooms available in neurotypical society. Like, we have to make our own. And, you know, on a college campus, there's not many places you can go and scream without attracting attention. The way I explain it to people is, you know, people's brains are like hamster wheels. Eventually, the hamster's got to take a break. Autistic brains aren't like that. They just keep going and going and going. So we can't stop thinking about things. There's, like, that's why a lot of kids with autism have sleep problems, because they can't fall asleep because they have too much on their brain. They can't sleep because they're thinking too much. And I think just the walking in circles, there's no thought to a circle. Like, it's just, like, so I'll just plug in my earphones so I can't hear anything else except whatever white noise I'm listening to, and I'll just walk in a circle. I think it's just like we are just as prevalent as men with autism. There might not be as many as there are boys, but we are still part of this movement. We're still part of this community, and we just got to remind people that, hey, you know, we're here too. You know, don't forget about us. One thing I've learned is that, first off, I'm not the only person who is speaking from their own perspective. Like, I feel like I go to some of these conferences and it's a bunch of doctors and a bunch of parents who want to talk and get to know what autism is about, but there's not a lot of people on the spectrum talking about it. And so I come to these and I see Temple Grandin, who's one of the biggest faces in the autism community, actually get up and talk about what helped her and what we need to do in order to get our kids out of society and not in our parents' basements. And so it's just kind of reaffirming, like, I'm not the only one. Thank you. Because I'd go to these and I would be the only one. I'd be next to a bunch of doctors and talking about words I have not even seen before, let alone pronounce. And I'm just sitting here like, I did a pageant once. So it's good to know, like, I'm speaking from a perspective of not necessarily overcoming, but learning to live with this, because I feel like not a lot of people come out and say what it's like to live on the autism spectrum. A lot of people talk about the struggles and everything like that, but they don't talk about, what they've done to make their lives better while living on the spectrum.
So thrilled to be here. It's one of those days. We got a lot to do and not enough time.
Mornings.
Yes, but I do want to say we're welcoming Vince Redmond via Skype. He is licensed marriage family therapist, and I said, we needed that today. We just saw a clip with Alexis Weinman, and it reminded me that we need to send out a shout out. Alexis's mother just passed away. And so we want to give a shout out to her, but it feeds right into, we were going to talk about something else today, Vince, but we want to talk a little bit about grief today, because while a lot of people are feeling exhilarated, there's about 51% of the people in the United States who are feeling grief, and some of them are autism parents. Some of our autism parents are thrilled, and this is just the way of it, but we need some perspective, and we need to know how to talk to our kids about grief. So first of all, thank you for being with us, Vince.
No problem. My pleasure. Well, the first thing we need to do is everyone, we just need to take a deep breath and just breathe and remember everything will be all right. We know there, grief is a part of the process of life, not only the process of our journey through the autism spectrum, but just through life, right? We love and we lose, and that's part of the life cycle. And part of it is, what we've experienced going through the autism journey, where, started very early on, where we started grieving when we, received the diagnosis. And, and that continues throughout the journey in different phases and different parts. But the way we respond to it, the way we're able to maintain it and to be able to understand it is something that's, that we need to work with individually.
Absolutely. And so, it's hard enough for us as adults, and of course I'm thinking about all the different levels of grief. Nancy's been going through the grief of having lost her husband.
Sure.
And we find our ways to deal with that as adults, but then languaging that to our kids.
Right.
That's a whole other thing. And a lot of times, I think our kids are more resilient than we know, but we see it come out in behavior. Don't you think that that's the truth, that it all comes out in the behavior?
Yeah.
It does. It does. And this is why we always say, we want to, always condone, communication. Now, the different levels of communication obviously are different per child, but we always want to make sure they feel comfortable, that there's an open space to talk, ask questions, open space to be able to cry, and to be able to emote if they're upset and they need that release. That's something that we need to be able to give them to do. And sometimes that goes into sensory needs with kids. When they're grieving and they're going through an emotional process, biologically there's a lot going on in their bodies as well. We need to give them that time, give them that space to run and to climb and to release those energies. They might not be able to process it cognitively. They might not be able to process it, through language, but they can process it through their behaviors by getting a lot of that integration. And sometimes when something like that might happen, and we have a child that's nonverbal, we want to increase the amount of exercise, increase the amount of sensory release that they might be needing.
Yeah, did you want to add something to that?
Well, yeah, the problem is sometimes when you're in grief, you don't have the time to devote to some of these things. You're just literally on a treadmill and on a tightrope. And it's very difficult when you're in that process of grieving to take yourself out of it.
Well, and it makes it doubly difficult when the parents are grieving as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's different when the child's grieving or the adult has already come to grips with it and have already gone through their grieving process. But when the whole family's grieving, when the parents and the child are grieving, it's very true. It's hard to not only find the time, but also to be motivated sometimes to problem solve. What do we need to do for our kids to be able to, get them the right environment to be able to process, or at least the right activities to help them. And this is where other professional individuals are very helpful. So counselors, therapists, ABA agencies that can reach out and specifically work with the kids on some of these things. This is where we reach out to those professionals for support.
And I'm wondering too, if part of it is expectations. So much of our society we just keep on going. Right? And used to be back in the day, and in some cultures now still, when somebody passes away, there's a whole process of, there's this many days that you don't do something, and there's this many days. A lot of employers now will give you 2 days off for a death in the family. And then it's like
let me
business,
tell ya.
back to business as usual. I don't know how people do that. And this expectation of, oh, you should be over it. Oh, you should be back doing all the things. And I think our kids pick up on that stuff is not okay. Even for people who say to me today, oh, my kid doesn't know anything about the election. I'm like, your kid is a barometer for everything we're all feeling. Everything we're feeling, we unknowingly, unwillingly hang it on our kids, and it comes out in them. And I think sometimes we just have this expectation of, oh, you're supposed to have it all together already, Nancy, that it's been 10 months.
Oh,
like it's all
without
supposed
a doubt.
to be.
Without a doubt. I get that.
And that's not realistic.
Because other people go on with their lives and they forget that you've had your heart turned out, ripped out of your body and stomped on. They just don't know that.
Right, and they might not have ever experienced it. And again, it's being able to survive and being able to manage is different than being able to have processed everything, right? And I think as soon as, when we're dealing with a loved one that has grieved, a lot of the outsiders are looking at just the being able to maintain and being able to, continue their just daily functions, right? Job and eating and those kind of things. But that does not mean that the process is continue or is complete. And as Nancy was saying, that it now you're even more alone because everyone's kind of gone back to their lives, and now everything's really setting in on the new reality of moving forward without that loved one, either obviously in Nancy's situation, her husband and Wyatt's dad, but the process is the same for any loved one, a grandparent, a parent, a spouse, a family dog that the child might have been very close with. Right, and so when we're looking at that process, I think you both are 100% right. The process doesn't end for a long time, and just because they're able to maintain doesn't mean they're still not grieving.
So allow yourself permission for that process to go on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And emote, cry, be upset.
Yeah.
You take those moments where you can let it out, because that whole adage of keep it to yourself or it's okay, don't cry is very unhealthy. We need to let and give adults just as well as the kids opportunities to let it out.
All right, we thank you so much, Vince. Unfortunately, we're short on time today, but we will look forward to having you back next month.
And we'll talk about the holiday stress then.
Yes, we will do it. We will do it. So thank you so much for being with us, Vince.
No problem, ladies. I know you're up against the clock. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Vince.
Bye.
We're here at the end of the show, and we're not even going to take a break, but we have a very special thing to commemorate today.
It's Wyatt's birthday, and I had wanted to read something, but I can't connect here to Facebook, to the thing that I wanted to read that I posted for those that don't. But I do know the emotions. I do know what happened 15 years ago to me, and 15 years and 2 months ago. Last night, as I was sitting at 2 a.m., feeling a lot of despair, a lot of grief related to my husband's death and a feeling of not feeling safe anymore in this country, not feeling hopeful. It took me back to the day I got a phone call on the 9/11 from the adoption center telling me that a new baby would be coming into the world. And we had given up on having a child. 2 months later, on 11/9, Wyatt Jackson was born. That picture you saw that Samantha put up is one of my favorites. Samantha, can you put that back up? It's a fairy tale. It was real for that moment. Fairy tales don't last. But I had it. And since that time, there has been so much love, so much loss, so much happiness, and heartbreak, but hope. Here's a recent photo of Wyatt crying over his dad. My friend Marcy captured it, another autism mom. I love this photo because it's real. It captures life in all of its messiness. Love, loss, heartbreak. And every night, almost every night, when my son goes outside and looks up into the stars and says, "Good night, Daddy, please come back from heaven," I want to take him in my arms. I want to take away his pain, but I can't. I can only try to keep him safe in an unsafe world. Celebrate him for who he is and who he isn't. Pray for the courage to love him unconditionally. And thank God for choosing me to be your mom. I am proud of you. I love you, my son, and nothing else matters.
And it's a very happy birthday for him. 15.
Yes.
15. He's a young man, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But thank you for sharing all of that with us. It's an emotional day. So we're going to wish Wyatt a happy birthday. We're totally out of time. We've got an amazing show for you tomorrow. Our unicorn, Dr. Linda Copeland, is with us tomorrow. We're going to talk specifically about sleep issues and genetic issues with her. We've got an amazing guest in the morning. My brain has gone completely. No, we're talking, we have the head of Astra who's going to be with us tomorrow. They're the American. We're totally out of time. But we're going to be talking about an amazing initiative having to do with toys this weekend. It's your neighborhood toy store
Great.
day.
And toys and joy.
And yes. And we also have Bonnie Yates is going to be with us tomorrow to answer your legal questions. So it's a packed show, you guys. Until then, keep the faith. I'm sending you a hug for your kiddo and one for you.
And give yourselves one for me. And remember, hope is our favorite four-letter word.
Bye-bye for now.